we're going to be taking that to the next level and talking about the audio side of things with the A7000 flagship 7.1.2 surround sound experience from Sony, and I want to give a huge thanks to them for sponsoring this video. So for those who don't know, in this home office, we have a setup where you have a secondary loft with all the desks, and you have the main area that is the open space where there's a kitchen and the living room, which we film most of the videos in, and that has about a 16-foot ceiling. And even though that is like a huge selling point from like an audio experience, it is a relatively open space that is not exactly sound optimized, and there are a lot of ways that you can improve the sound experience overall. And in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at how the 7.1.2 soundbar kind of captures the elements of a surround sound experience in a way that is unique through the hardware and software optimization, as well as some of like the A-series accessories that are able to build on that experience, including rear speakers that point to the ceiling and also provide just like a fuller surround sound, and also the subwoofer, which is all wireless and is able to all come together to bring you that full like 360 sound. So in the front of the room, of course, you have the star of the show, and that is a Sony A90J Master Series OLED TV. It is literally the most like favorite piece of tech that I own, and it's very hard to give that title because there are just so many things that we check out in the office on a regular basis. But beyond that, you have the soundbar placed in front of it, and if you guys saw a review of the TV, we actually had in the configuration where the TV was sitting flat on the surface, but you're able to adjust the stand to be able to accommodate a soundbar, and that is what we've done here. So the model that we're talking about today is the A7000 flagship Dolby Atmos soundbar, and that is their top end model. And you can see that it is relatively substantial in terms of its length, and that is for a few reasons. It has a ton of different speakers inside with the 7.1.2 channel setup, including 5 speakers on the front, a ceiling firing speaker on both sides, and the broader it is, the kind of more surround dimension it is able to give you throughout that singular unit. There's also a speaker on each side of it, so all of it is kind of built together to not only give the person sitting in front the best experience, but also dimensional experience throughout. And if you want to go ahead and add the A-series accessories that we're going to talk about as well, then that kind of builds upon it. There is also a visual indicator behind the grill which shows the input that it's on, the settings, the volume, and all that. So you don't have to actually go into the specific menu every single time to be able to change the specific options or the status of the soundbar. The top here has like a nice tempered glass, like gloss finish, and you also have like a bit of the mesh that covers the ceiling speakers, but as you look closely, you'll see how everything is mapped out and contoured, and you also have touch capacitive settings on the top here to go between your sources, your connectivity options, the volume, and there's also a dedicated remote for the soundbar itself, which allows you to control the rear speakers, the main volume of the soundbar, the Bluetooth, and just like all the little specifics of the audio experience. Begin with the actual surround experience with the front-facing speakers, which you can see along the grill. I like the fact that the soundbar is relatively large because if you have like a 65-inch TV, for example, it can sit in front of it, and with the length of the soundbar, it is able to separate each speaker effectively and give you the little distinguishments between the sound of each channel. And the tech behind it is like the exclusive processing, sound field optimization, and also X-balanced speakers and beam tweeters that create a wide soundstage. These beam tweeters are actually found on each side of the speaker, so it's able to kind of fire in all directions, and wherever you kind of decide to sit in the room, it doesn't really have to be front and center. It is still able to give you that level of dimension. A dimension that a lot of soundbars lack though is in the vertical sound. In a custom home theater setup, you're gonna have front-facing speakers, maybe side speakers, as well as ceiling speakers, but that is something that is relatively hard to install and can be quite expensive, and unless you're building like a custom home or dropping the ceiling, it just isn't exactly practical, and if you're buying a soundbar, you're often looking for convenience and an easy setup, and with this soundbar, there's actually 2 ceiling firing speakers. They're found on the left and right side and are along the edges to, again, utilize the length of the speaker to give you that dimension, and it uses the vertical surround engine to optimize that vertical sound regardless of the height of your ceiling. So it's like a soundbar itself. If you were to go ahead and just purchase the HT-A7000, it already gives you like a relatively full experience. It is the flagship model in Sony's lineup, and on top of that, if you have like some 2021 model TVs or any of the 2022 model TVs, one of the things that we talked a lot about in our A90J review is that it actually has acoustic center speakers where the sound actually penetrates through the panel of the display to give you the most immersive experience as opposed to traditional speakers on TVs that are just firing off the back. And I really liked how that was able to connect to like a traditional home theater setup and utilize a TV as a center channel, but at the same time, if you want to go ahead and use a soundbar in conjunction with that center channel, it will fully take advantage of that feature. So now that we've got the main soundbar, how do we take things a step further? So in Sony's A series, there's actually a few other accessories, including like a subwoofer, for example, which we also have here. But the coolest one, in my opinion, is the rear speakers. A lot of times with soundbars, it's all front and center. It's nice to have the ceiling and also the side firing as well, but you really can't replicate a full like 360-degree experience without having speakers in the back, no matter how good the optimization is. So in terms of the configurations, this is how it is set up. I have the 83-inch TV right there, as well as the HT A7000 soundbar, which is probably about 10 feet away. And this is where you guys typically see us film the videos, but the couch usually lives around here. It's relatively well like kind of situated in the middle of the room, but behind me, there's kind of like a weird gap here that doesn't really have any power running to it, but with the console table, it is the perfect situation to have the rear speakers. This is the RS5 flagship model. It actually has a 10-hour battery life, so I'm able to just charge these up and place them here when I'm like watching TV, maybe if I want to listen to music, but 10 hours is quite respectable for a speaker of this size that has the ceiling firing speaker, as well as a tweeter, woofer, the main speaker itself, and each side provides up to 90 watts of power. One thing to note though is that it isn't always going to utilize that full power. It is going to adjust dynamically depending on what is best optimized for the content that you're watching. So it doesn't necessarily always have to be overpowering because the main source of sound still comes from your soundbar. Whether you have the A7000 model or the A5000 model, this is able to sit right here. And I feel like this is like a very easy way to really take your home theater setup to the next level by also having rear speakers with the ceiling dimension all tied together thanks to Sony's 360 spatial sound. I personally love having a low console table behind a low couch because you can either have, like in this case, audio, but at the same time you can also have like different accessories and stuff. And if you guys had seen like my home tour over the past few years, I got so much hate for putting the soundbar behind, and that was just because I didn't really know where else to put it. There wasn't much space on the wall. And in this case, at least it is a good use because these speakers not only look good, but at the same time, they are able to bring a whole level of function as well. In terms of what ensures a great experience though, there are a few things here. The first one is the flexibility. You're able to either have them floating here and not have any cables running to it and just keep your setup nice and clean, or perhaps your couch is all the way up against the wall. You can choose to wall mount these, maybe have it on like a shelf, because with the flat back design here, I can just go ahead and like place it against the wall and it will sit fully flush, but you can also choose the distance at which they're spaced out. The way that it is also shaped kind of disperses the sound nicely, but yeah, this is how I have it set up. And the last piece that I have is the subwoofer. So this right here is the SW3. It is the smaller of the two options, and I think for like a living room of this size, it is perfect. This couch is obviously not the biggest. It is an office loft, so I didn't want something that took up the whole place, but this subwoofer is able to provide a great amount of power that is able to kind of work in conjunction with the soundbar and with the rear speakers, but at the same time is not overpowering to the point where in like a 1,000 square foot condo with a 700 square foot like main floor, it's gonna get like noise complaints or shake the unit next to it. So that is like kind of my configuration here. You can see that it still retains all the great characteristics of like a compact living room, but at the same time really focuses towards the large TV setup while also utilizing the way the space is laid out effectively. The flagship RS5 comes in at a price of $599 for the pair, but say you like don't need 180 watts of combined power and you're also able to just like plug these in the wall and maybe have it on a shelf behind you, then the RS3S is a relatively good deal at a price of $349 that delivers a total of 100 watts of power and still has a woofer, tweeter, and bass reflex while coming in at like a smaller form factor. So it really does come down to what you need. In my opinion, at a price of $350, it is a great way to elevate your soundbar experience. But if you do want like the full experience of like a ceiling firing speaker, as well as a 10-hour battery life and the larger power output in general, then the RS5 is the flagship. What I really like about the Sony experience is that it is all wireless, and so it's relatively hands-free and seamless in terms of the aesthetic. I went ahead and connected the two rear speakers as well as the soundbar, and it was all good to go. And that is where you kind of start the sound optimization process, more specifically the 360 spatial sound mapping. 360-degree sound is something we've talked about with Sony for quite a while when it comes to like the headphones, the audio optimizations, and how it's able to give the user a very immersive experience across all of Sony's audio products. It is essentially intended to create like multiple phantom speakers from just a soundbar and rear speakers, and with all the speakers around you arranged in the optimal sound field for your space, it is able to give you all the drama of Dolby Atmos and DTS-X. And it does this by combining Sony's monopole synthesis technology that allows the phantom sound sources to be freely mapped in your space, and sound field optimization for the most accurate and immersive experience for the room. The monopole synthesis specifically synthesizes sound waves from multiple real speakers to reproduce phantom sound sources at any position. So beyond where the speakers are actually placed, it is able to utilize the sensors and what it detects from like the wall spaces to be able to create those phantom dimensions anywhere you are in the room. So during the 360-degree spatial sound setup process, all you have to do is ensure everything is connected. It will let you know if your left or right speaker is connected, and by pressing the power button, it will turn on and link to it right away. From there, you place them where you want to and just press the optimization button. Then it will actually fire off like a test sound, and through the microphones that are built in, are able to get those signals that have either bounced off the walls, the ceilings, and in this case the slats, and set the settings specifically to give you the best experience possible. After that, it will actually play a tester sound, and within like 15 seconds, I think, the whole process was done, and you can either keep it as it is at all times if you don't plan to move these speakers, or you can recalibrate them depending on where you have them placed each time. So now that we've gone in depth with this whole like audio experience and audio upgrade in the home office in what was already a pretty crazy setup before, how exactly does it sound? Because that is going to be the bottom line. And to be honest, when it comes to like listening to music, it's already a very enjoyable experience on the soundbar, but if you're just casually listening to music, it doesn't fully take advantage of the whole like 360 sound mapping. It is a lot more of a casual experience. Where you're really going to notice a huge difference if you're someone who really likes to watch movies or has content that is Dolby optimized, whether it is a Dolby True Surround Sound or the Dolby Atmos, and a lot of like Netflix shows or stuff that you can download off of Bravia Core, which is Sony's system, are able to take advantage and support this entire 360 setup at its fullest. It really does come down to the utility of what you're specifically going to be using it for. And someone like myself, I would say I watch like 70% sports, 30% like TV shows. It really does depend. But if I'm just watching sports, I might not always get the full experience, but I do appreciate having the rear speakers to be able to give me other dimensions of like the puck moving around in a hockey game or the Formula One car driving past. But as I said, it is nothing compared to when you have Dolby Atmos supported content. With the physical elements of a strong speaker that already covers a lot of the bases, along with the 180-watt pair of rear speakers and the bass, from a sound standpoint, you're already gonna have an incredible setup, but it definitely does come in at a cost. If you're looking to just buy like the HT A7000 soundbar, I feel like you're already gonna be very satisfied with the experience, but if you wanna take things a step further or have like a very large room setup that you don't wanna like custom build into speakers in the ceiling and in the wall, then it would make sense to go ahead and purchase the rear facing speakers as well. It does make a pretty big difference, but I've got to say the soundbar alone is already quite impressive, and it definitely does come in at a pretty penny. If you're gonna go ahead and buy the rear speakers though, then you might as well add a subwoofer as well. And I would say if you were to decide between spending on the rear speakers or the subwoofer, I would probably go with the RS5 rear speakers, which is the higher end model,